30 seconds, okay. Okay, hi everybody. My name is Seth Hardy, and I'm going to be talking about online communities and the politics of DDoS. That's distributed denial of service attacks for anybody who's questioning it. So, my name is Seth, and I seem to have become a DDoS magnet. The reason for this is because I'm involved in a number of online communities. The biggest one is Oculi.net, which right now has more than 80 users. It's a shell server, IRC server, hosts a number of services for people, email, web space, and unfortunately, this seems to have got me a lot of attention all the way from kiddies who want to DDoS me to the FBI. So I get to deal with a lot of this stuff on a day-to-day basis, and I figured I would share the lessons I've learned and the mistakes I've made with you guys. So if anybody here is interested in working on a similar online community, you don't do the things that I did wrong, and you have a much better way of going about doing it from the beginning. So last year I talked about building communities in self-destructive environments. Not that the hacker scene has any self-destructive environments. It has nothing to do with it at all. So this is sort of a continuation on that theme about people who try to destroy the infrastructure that is there, provided there for them for free. And that's what I'm doing. I don't charge any money. I don't have any requirements for donations or anything like that for the service. It's free. And as a result, a lot of people just don't think it's bad to attack it. I'm not quite sure why. But I have some theories, and I'm going to talk about them. So we're going to do this in about 3 parts. First is the problem, what denial of service attacks are, and the social aspects of them, as well as the technical. Second part is on countermeasures. We're going to cover the technical methods of countering DDoSes, and then the other methods. You'll see what this means in a little bit. And third part is about the blame game. Unfortunately, one of the big problems with denial of service attacks, and this is why I'm giving the talk in the first place, is that there is a mentality among people who are DDoSed that the victim is the person to blame. So I'm going to cover a little about this and tell you how to try to break that and what to do if you are ever the victim of a DDoS attack and you have your ISP telling you that it's your fault because you made it happen. At any point, if anybody has any questions, please raise your hand or just yell at me or shout at me or something like that. So I guess we will start. Starting with the problem. Here's a quick summary of the problem. The internet is serious business. Everybody takes it very seriously when they shouldn't, and a lot of people feel the need to exert power over others. There's always that guy that just wants to ruin it for everyone, whether it's because he feels a sense of empowerment from doing it or because he's not part of the special club. And this always exists, whether it's an online community or an offline community. It's always there, and unfortunately on online communities it's harder to deal with because there's such factors as anonymity involved. DDoS attacks generally aren't worth it for somebody doing it themselves because it's usually eye for an eye. Any packets that you have going out generally is the same as the packets coming in unless you're using some sort of reflector. But a lot of times that's not even necessary anymore, so it's eye for an eye, same that going out is the same coming in, but the advantage that the DDoSers have is they're not using their own connection. They're using a botnet. And so I will describe the botnet stuff in a little bit. And the other main problem with DDoS attacks right now is that it's very easy to build a large botnet. Microsoft vulnerabilities in particular, you don't need any technical skills if you want to build a botnet of thousands of bots that will launch a denial of service attack at any IP of your choice at any time. All you have to do is download a script, run the script, wait a week or two, and you can get literally thousands of bots at your command that you can send off at whatever targets you'd like. And because access to this weaponry is so easy for anybody, even if they have absolutely no technical skills whatsoever, this is going to be a very common problem, and stopping it from the side of the attacker is not going to work. So unfortunately, we're put on the defensive, and the attacks have to be stopped on the side of the defender, which is a lot harder. So I'll talk about that later on as well. Online communities as public spaces, there's a very clear comparison between meetings in person and online communities. From anywhere from how people participate to how the group self-polices. Groups in person generally tend to self-police very well. If you look at Nauticon, for example, the organizers of the con have people working a security detail. If there's a problem with one of the attendees, the security detail has the authority to have them removed from the con or the hotel. If you are breaking the law in real life, police have the authority to stop you, detain you, and put you in jail if you are doing something that is against the rules. On online communities, this is a little harder to deal with, and especially in hacker circles, where a lot of people who are involved in the hacker community are outcasts from their own larger community, and you're always the geek or the nerd or whatever, and as a result, the hacker community seems to be a lot more accepting than other communities. And while this is a great thing to get everybody involved and everybody participating, it makes it harder to identify problems and have them removed. There are a number of situations where, how many people went to the Hackerspaces talk? Okay, so they talked a lot about a number of these hackerspaces. One of the hackerspaces was the Hacker Halfway House, and I was one of the original participants in it. One of the problems that we had is that everybody was welcome, and even if somebody was causing trouble, it was very hard to come up with a way that was agreed upon by everybody how to punish or enforce punishment on somebody who's breaking the rules. It seems to be very common, 2600 meetings, for example, where a lot of behavior that is generally considered antisocial, people can get away with it. And on one hand, that's great because it makes the community a lot more open. But on the other hand, it's harder to police the community against people who are only there to disrupt. It's one thing if somebody just doesn't have the greatest social skills and says things that's inappropriate. It's another thing if somebody is actively trying to disrupt the community. And that line isn't very clear, and even when it is, people hesitate. From what I've seen, both online and off in my experiences, people hesitate to actually make that distinction and enforce a sort of punishment. And again, this is worse on the internet because it's a great decentralized mess. There are no rules that necessarily need to be applied to or enforced at any particular site. So just because you are going to a certain shell server on the internet, there might be a rule saying no launching denial of service attacks against people. It's completely unenforceable. So the rules don't always apply, and people who choose to ignore the rules have a lot more leeway than people who choose to ignore the rules in real life. And this leads to the empowerment of a lot of people who say they're bullied in real life or just generally want to show some sort of power over others. There's no way to stop this. There really isn't. And as a result, again, the defender has to deal with the problem. And I'm not the only person who's noticed this. This is from Penny Arcade. It's true. Does anybody here deny that? Okay. It sucks. It's terrible. But unfortunately, this is the way it is. So, and this is how it's done. Generally, the way a botnet will work is that somebody will set up a scanner that goes from IP to IP, trying to find machines that are vulnerable, usually a Windows vulnerability, and it will compromise that machine, and it will bring that machine onto IRC on a particular control channel. And then they can go into that channel on the IRC server and they just have to type in one command, and all of the different zombies, the infected machines, will immediately start to launch an attack against your target. So it's just remote control software that you can get tens, hundreds, or even thousands of machines at once. It's very effective, and I'm one of the administrators for 2600net, the 2600 IRC network. We've had to stop these channels on a number of occasions because they were using our network as a way of launching their attacks or controlling their attacks. So it works, unfortunately, and given the way IRC is set up, there's not really much we can do about it. You just have to keep a vigilant eye on your servers, and if you see one of these control channels, you can shut down the entire botnet, at least temporarily, by closing down the channel. But because it's distributed, there is no simple way of stopping one of these attacks. Yes?
How do you generally recognize a control channel?
The question was, how do you generally recognize a control channel? And the answer to that is bot names are usually automatically generated. Usually it's either random letters or numbers. So it's very easy to identify a channel that is filled with bots if you do a listing of all the channels on the server and you see a channel with maybe 1,000 users in it and your server only has 400 people normally. Or if you see a channel with even 50 people, but those people are all randomly generated NICs of the exact same format. It just sort of indicates that there's not a person behind it. The other way you can do is you can actually go into a suspicious channel and see who's doing what in there. None of the bots will ever talk unless they're reporting status messages. So that's a good way to identify them. And if you see somebody saying attack IP, then it's also pretty clear that this is a botnet. So that's how you can generally identify them. They don't really hide their existence much except for setting the mode of the channel +S, which is secret, so that it doesn't show up on a listing. But if you're an administrator of the network and you're poking around, you can always find these things. And here's what a few of the common DDoS attacks look like. The first is a simple ping flood. This is just a ping to a machine and the echo response back. This is a lot worse when you have thousands or millions of these happening per second and it's using up all your bandwidth. Another attack is a SYN flood. This uses the TCP three-way handshake. It'll send out the SYN packet, and it's just a normal SYN packet. You will see this packet in any normal, legitimate TCP connection. And the server will send back a SYN ACK, and the attacker will just leave it open. And what this does is it will use up all of your available connections, keeping them in this half-open state where it's waiting for the third part of the handshake to come through. And it will eventually time out, but what this means is that you can block legitimate users from accessing the machine because there are no more available connections. If you're sending out 1 million connections per second and you only have, say, 100, then it's very unlikely that anybody who's trying to make a legitimate connection is going to get through. So if you want to identify a SYN flood, you just look for a whole lot of SYN packets and no ACKs following up on the SYN ACK. Another common attack is the Smurf or Fraggle attack, which is either ICMP or UDP echo replies. What this is an attacker will send out to multicast addresses a packet asking for a response and forge the from address, the IP address in it, so that all of these machines will then try to respond to this IP address that happens to be the victim. And if somebody has their network misconfigured, this attack can be used as an amplifier. So you have a small number of packets going out and a whole lot coming back against the attacker, and it's not coming from you. So it's a good way of both hiding who you are if the network is misconfigured, as well as doing an amplification attack. And it's good to know what these look like, especially in TCP dump or Ethereal or another network analyzer, because if you're being attacked and you want to figure out what's going on, the best way to do it is to load up a packet capture of what your line is seeing, and this is how you identify what it is, whether it's an actual network outage or whether you're under attack. So That's it on